Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books, and today we're reviewing Life of Dreams by Robert Jordan. This is book 11 in the Wheel of Time. We are in the end game now, as Doctor Strange would say. This is the final book written by Robert Jordan in the Wheel of Time. One quick thing I want to note about is spoilers. So I will not be spoiling this book, but I will probably have to spoil books 1 through 10 and New Spring. So if you have not read books 1 through 10 and New Spring of the Wheel of Time, I highly recommend it. This is one of the greatest fantasy series ever written, and this book really does cement it for Robert Jordan in that this is maybe my favourite book by him in the Wheel of Time. So let's get right into things and let's talk about Life of Dreams. So, staging information. This was, in Jordan's mind, the penultimate book. So, he had thought that Wheel of Time would be 12 books. He wrote this one assuming it was going to be the penultimate book. And then what happened was he finished the book and then he was diagnosed and found out that he did not have long left. And so he passed on his notes for book 12 to Brandon Sanderson, who took one look at those notes and went, this is 3 books. And eventually Sanderson came in and he wrote those 3 final books in short order, and those books all came out and the series is done. Jordan did write one more thing for Wheel of Time, which is apparently the final chapter in the final book, A Memory of Light, is Robert Jordan. So Jordan is able to kind of bookend the series to open and close it. Something that I think was really nice for Sanderson to do. Sanderson seems to have been incredibly respectful with the Wheel of Time. I have yet to read any of his particular books, but I will be very soon. Let's talk a bit about this specific book. So this book marks for many the uptick after the slog years. So many people refer to books 8 through 10 as the slog, with book 10, which I believe is Crossroads of Twilight. Yeah, Crossroads of Twilight is the sloggiest, weakest book. And I would agree that I think Crossroads of Twilight is the weakest book in the series. And I would agree that this is a massive, massive step up. Let's talk about the major reasons there. So many people believe that this is a massive step up because Jordan resolves a lot of the less popular storylines. One of the least popular storylines is Elaine and her quest for the Sun Throne. The Sun Throne? Rose Throne, I think it is. The throne of Camelin, of Andor. And she has been under siege in Andor for a couple of books now. Her chapters in Crossroads of Twilight were particularly affected by the format of that book and by the nature of the slog. So in Crossroads of Twilight, we get like 4 or 5 Elaine chapters in a row, and those Elaine chapters are unfortunately not particularly active. Is that the right way of describing it? That's kind of the wrong way. So the Elaine chapters they're not very eventful. That's the term I was thinking of. They're not very eventful. There is, for example, an entire chapter about how Elaine is getting in or out of the bath. A lot of things are happening, discussions are happening, but it feels like the major events in Elaine's quest for the throne of Andor happen in book 8 book 9 and book 11. So what ends up happening there is that basically nothing happens in book 10. So you've got this character who's kind of treading water. And we get some major developments for her in this one. So we get the resolution of her story. I won't say what happens, but that storyline is resolved, and it's resolved in I think, a really interesting and impactful and also action-heavy way, which I really liked. We also get some furthering of other story stuff. So we get to learn a bit more about the Black Archer, and there's been kind of a whole kind of very, very background, but there has been a whole like murder mystery subplot going on with the Andor stuff and with Elaine's story, and it's the murder mystery stuff has basically been persisting since they used the Bowl of the Winds, which I feel like was like book 6, maybe 5. I can't remember exactly, but it was an extremely long time ago. So that storyline has truly been persisting for a very long time, and we get a little measure of closure there with like a kind of door open to continue on. We have had a lot of really good Black Archer storytelling recently. It's quite funny that in these books, the bad guys, the Forsaken and the Black Archer, both seem to be incredibly... my brain is not functioning today. They both seem to be incredibly incompetent. So they're one of the main features of evil characters, and especially in the Wheel of Time, is that they're very selfish. The reward for helping the Dark One is eternal life. So very few of them are like religiously devout to the cause of the Dark One, in the same way that characters who are on the side of the light are. So there are, Rand frequently talks about how he will sacrifice himself to save the world. Multiple characters put themselves in harm's way to protect others, but none of the Black Archer will do that, because all of their motivations is power, eternal life, being raised to be one of the Forsaken, for example. So all of them have this incredibly selfish outlook, and so when their plans could succeed, if they were like, right, I'm going to put my life on the line and we'll nail this Rand al'Thor guy, none of them are willing to like go toe-to-toe with him, which is, I think, a really interesting way of writing these villainous characters, because a lot of the time in especially in fantasy, you'll get villainous characters who are like heroes in their own mind. Like they have their own cause and their own beliefs, and they're fighting for this specific thing, and that might be their own their own self-empowerment might be a major factor, but oftentimes the villains are heroes from a different point of view. That's something that writers have been talking about in science fiction, fantasy, and other genres for many, many years. But in this series, there's very few people who are like, I'm fighting for the Dark One, and I think it's because the Dark One will make the world better. And so I think that because of that, like Mike's book reviews, I watch his video reviews of The Wheel of Time, and he's often talking about how the Forsaken are like chumps, and I think that that's because they're completely self-motivated. I think that's intentional. I don't think the Forsaken are meant to be this like terrifying threat. Like, yes, they're powerful. Yes, they're ancient. They know all this stuff. They're working on wheels within their plans. But if their plans look like they might be in danger, those Forsaken are like out of here. They're not interested, and I really like that. I like that that's a very purposeful thought it's clearly purposeful from Jordan, or else all the characters wouldn't be like that. And we also have characters that show you how fearful these evil characters are, like Alviarin and I can't remember the name of the red for There's a Tarabona Red from the beginning of the series who betrays everyone, and she eventually is, she becomes a Damani. All of these evil characters are very fearful. They are terrified. They, have no backbone. And then you see characters like Egwene who are standing up for themselves, for what they believe in, and they hold a really strong, stark contrast. Egwene's story in this book I really, really loved, and the maybe tiny negative that I have is that I wanted more from Egwene. I kind of kept expecting her to get another raft of chapters later in the book, and we only really spend a big chunk of time with her once. We never really go back. There's some fantastic action sequences in this book, specifically the attack on the manor with Rand and Logain was really fantastic. We have the closure of a few smaller storylines. So Loyal, a major aspect of his story, his kind of running away from his mother, is resolved in this book. We also have Matt and Tuon's relationship reaches a resolution in this book. And I think that relationship in particular is really well drawn, really well written. Matt overall, you can see why he's most people's favourite character. His POV chapters are written in a much more whimsical and enjoyable way, because that's kind of who he is as a character. When you look at look through the eyes of Perrin, through the eyes of Rand, they're a bit more methodical, they're a bit slower paced, whereas Matt's are always faster paced, they're always fun, the things that happen in them are funny. Matt overall has been a real joy. Even through the slog books, I think Matt has been doing particularly well. He's come away from the slog books the best of all of the characters, I think, because multiple of the characters are kind of having a bit of downtime during the slog books. We don't see much from Rand over the slog. Perrin is, wife guy. He's very upset that his wife is a slave, which, you would be. Yeah, there's a lot going on with these characters, and I think in particular, Perrin has a great book as well. Perrin very much ready to die for his wife, ready to die for love. One of the interesting things here is that Rand is loving despite himself. So Rand has fallen in love with his three wives, and very much kind of wishes he wasn't, because he doesn't want to, I think that there's a quote from Lan very early on in the series, which is that, a widow's vestments make a poor dowry for a bride. And Rand has very much taken that on board as well. Despite the fact that both Lan and Rand are now married. Rand also seems to be spending all of his time with Min and basically none with Avienda. And, wham bam thank you ma'am with Elaine, and then has not seen her since. Very, very weird relationships going on here. I think that it does make me feel a little bit like Jordan maybe was like, oh, maybe it actually does kind of make sense for Min to be the only wife, love interest for Rand. But he'd already put together this thruple, quapple if there's 4 people in it. So he'd already put together this whole quapple situation, and that does kind of take you out of it, remembering the 3 wives thing. It's not ideal. It is probably one of the biggest drawbacks of this. Do you know what? I would rather keep the slog books as they are, right? But get rid of the quapple. Like, make Min the only love interest. It'd be great, it would have been really good to have seen a progression for Rand, So he ditches Egwene in like a book 2 and falls in love with Elaine straight away. But it would have been interesting to have seen him progressed through the love interests to end up with Min. And for her to kind of be okay with it in that way, because she can see the future. She's like, sow your oats, I know that you're going to marry me someday. And I think that would have probably, for me, been a more interesting and a better way to have multiple love interests. And, you know, maybe Jordan didn't set that up because he didn't envisage this being a eventually 14-book series. He's looking at this going, this is going to be 3 books initially. Then he was like, no, it's going to be 5. And then eventually, I don't know when it became 12, but it did become 12. I wonder if during the slog is when it became 12. And we've got, you know, like I said, keep the slog, ditch the quapple. That would be great. However, moving on, really enjoyed this book. I don't know if I've made that clear. My favourite Wheel of Time book ever. I can't think of any down notes. A lot of people have said that the Elaine... Pardon me. A lot of people have said that the Elaine chapters are weaker. I'm going to be honest with you, I do disagree. I've always liked Elaine as a character. I have felt that she was written quite... She was not given anything to do in the last couple of books, but we still spent a lot of time with her, which I think was a big failing on the kind of planning and structure of these books, especially because we often spend a lot of time with Elaine in one go. So we won't be like, right, we're going to have an Elaine chapter, then a Perrin chapter, then a Matt chapter. We'll be like, we're going to have an Elaine chapter, then an Elaine chapter, then an Elaine chapter, then an Elaine chapter. And that, I think, makes her stand out more. She often has a lot of like shorter but sequential chapters where Jordan is like, right, I'm splitting the scene here, or I'm going to go to a new day, but I still want to stay with Elaine. So he's doing, he's sticking her together, when I think that she would have really benefited in the slog books, especially Crossroads of Twilight. She would have really benefited from being mixed up. So if you'd had the chapter about Elaine being in the bath, and then you'd had 2 chapters of Egwene in the Siege of Tar Valon, that would have worked a lot better than going like, Elaine, bath, Elaine, oh, I'm out of the bath and I'm a bit cold now. Do you know what I mean? Like, those chapters would have worked better split up. And we have actually discussed this on the spoiler chats, so if you are only watching these videos, just to let you know, I do a full spoiler discussion of every Wheel of Time book, and we actually go into a lot more depth. The episode's been up to an hour and a half with my friend Matt of the channel Bask in the Story. He's not actually YouTubing anymore on his own channel, but he's still showing up to mine, so thank you, Matt. So yeah, we go into full deep discussion and full spoilers, and we will be doing that for Knife of Dreams as well. That will be coming out, not actually sure when, because Matt hasn't finished Knife of Dreams yet, but I'm in no particular rush because I haven't started the next book yet or anything, and he actually has been ahead of me the last few times, so he's got some leeway from me for certain. So if you want to hear more full in-depth spoiler thoughts and our discussions, we have talked about every single book, including New Spring. And I do think our Crossroads of Twilight one was really interesting because we went into a little bit more of like our criticism of the structure of the book and the order, and in more depth than I can here in this review, because this isn't a review of Crossroads of Twilight. So loved this book. I really enjoyed seeing our major characters from other perspectives as well. So we get some chapters from the POV of Birgitta. We get some chapters from the POV of the Seanchan. And there's a great one where we have a chapter where the Seanchan Death Watch lead guard guy meets Matt. and Tom Merrilin and Noel and all of these characters. And I really like that one. Like that in particular really sticks out in my memory. I really liked Galena, the kind of evil black. Well, she's a Black Archer. The Black Archer Aes Sedai who's actually semi-competent and betrays Fael. So that's been in the planning for months, books and books. But I really liked seeing more of that. And everyone kind of assuming that Aes Sedai can't lie, even though they know the Black Archer out there, but whatever. Everyone kind of assuming that Aes Sedai can't lie, so she gets this kind of instant trust, which I thought was really funny. Really liked kind of feeling like the Shido plotline's kind of wrapped up, or going to be wrapped up very, very soon. Oh no, it is wrapped up. It is wrapped up. I've forgotten that part. So that's that whole storyline that has been kind of boring, I'll be honest with you guys, for the last book or so, is now wrapped up. I will be sad if we don't get as many Fael point of views as we have done in the past. I really enjoyed spending more time with Fael. I think she's a really interesting character. There are very few political operatives in the point of views. So Elaine is very political, but I think that she's still very much like, well, what I'm doing is for the greater good. Whereas Fael is a bit more like, what I'm doing is to get my way. Like as a manipulator, as a political character, she's more interesting to me. And I really like her as a pairing with Perrin, who is a lot more kind of open and simpler as a character. I feel like now, over the last few books, with Perrin's kind of descent into his character kind of just being wife guy, unfortunately Perrin has kind of fallen out of my favourite characters. I feel like the last time I really liked Perrin was The Shadow Rising. And if I was doing a tier ranking of characters right now, it would be like Matt at the top, then followed by like Egwene, Lan, Rand. I really enjoyed spending more time with Logain in this book as well. I like Logain and Rand as like a pairing, like Batman and Robin style. I enjoy that a lot. The cleansing of the male half of the Source has made all of the Ashaman more relevant as characters, I think. So previously, when they could have like gone mad or died at any point, like that was just not very. It was harder to get attached to those characters. Whereas now, I'm like, oh, Grady, he's fantastic, and Time and Logain, like all of these Ashaman are really interesting characters, and I really like spending more time with them. So I'm looking forward to getting more Logain as we go. So I think that's probably time to close this video review out. I hope that I've kind of given across my impression that I'm just really loving this book, and cannot wait to read The Gathering Storm, as I have heard. The interesting thing is, right, so people have told me that all the different people have told me all three of the Sanderson Wheel of Time books are their favourite of his Wheel of Time books. And some of them have even said that various Sanderson Wheel of Time books are their favourite for the whole series. I have heard some negative that Sanderson cannot write Matt Cawthon very well, and I'm eager to see whether that's the case or not. Sanderson does feel a bit more of a Perrin than a Matt Cawthon, so I am assuming that he'll do Perrin well, but there's no characters really like Matt in the Cosmere, so I'm not expecting, Matt to be particularly brilliant based on other characters he's written, but I'm very happy to be proven wrong. And I'm genuinely just really loving this series, really looking forward to reading the next book. I genuinely was tempted to skip straight on and start reading Gathering Storm straight away, because I wanted to know where things went. But for now, let's leave it here. So, have you read Knife of Dreams by Robert Jordan, the final book by Robert Jordan in The Wheel of Time? If you have, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. If you have not liked this video already, then please do that on the way down to that comments box. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? You need to know when we're going to be posting our full spoiler chat. So please subscribe and make sure you tick the bell icon to be notified when I upload my next video. And I will speak to you tomorrow.